A snap lockdown is to hit Victoria from midnight. The whole state will enter stage 4 restrictions until the end of Wednesday. We'll only be able to leave home for 4 reasons: essential supplies, care and caregiving, exercise and essential work. Exercise and shopping must be within 5 kilometres from your house, and no visitors are allowed. This is all to stop the spread of the highly contagious coronavirus strain in the growing cluster from a quarantine hotel. For more on this, I'm joined by Richard Willingham, state political reporter who's at Parliament House, and Tom Maddox, who's standing by at Melbourne Park. First, we'll go to Rich Willingham. Rich, I'll go to you first. Can you take us through the details of the day's events?
There's some pretty tough news for most Victorians tonight. This is because of this outbreak linked to the Holiday Inn hotel quarantine site, which only stands at 13, but it's the highly contagious variant of the coronavirus strain that's really got the authorities worried. In particular, it's the fact that a worker did a shift at Brunetti's at the Melbourne airport, and that person has tested positive, and they're really worried about the spread and how quickly this virus is moving, which is why they've decided to take this action for a quick lockdown to try and work out how wide it spread and to try and stop it in its track. Here's how the lockdown is going to work. It's a 6-hour shift at this Melbourne airport cafe that has forced Victoria into its 3rd lockdown.
Today's announcements are not about dealing with a 3rd wave. They are about making the difficult choices to prevent a 3rd wave.
From tonight, all of Victoria returns to the rules that restricted Melbourne last year. People must remain at home and only venture out for supplies, medical care, exercise and work if it cannot be done from home.
This is a short, sharp circuit breaker rather than a more prolonged set of rules and restrictions.
The 5-day rules are all too familiar, with a 5-kilometre travel limit from home reimposed. Masks are mandatory everywhere except at home. There's no private or public gatherings. Schools, higher education and training centres are all closed. But early learning centres, childcare and family daycare remain open. Funerals can have no more than 10 mourners. Weddings are not permitted unless there's exceptional reasons.
We have to assume, based on advice, that there's transmission out there that we don't know about, and that it's not moving quickly, it's moving at light speed.
Non-essential retail, physical recreation, accommodation, real estate, swimming pools, hairdressing and beauty care are all closed. Hospitality can remain open, but for takeaway only. Outdoor playgrounds can open, but hospitals and aged care must have no visitors.
This government stuffed up hotel quarantine again. This government let the virus into our community again. And this government is now making Victorians pay by locking us up for a 3rd time. It is just not good enough.
A proportionate response that enables those, the tracers and others, to be able to get on top of it and get the same successful result that we've seen in other states. That can and will be achieved here.
The source of the outbreak is the Holiday Inn hotel quarantine site, after it spread in the air from a family to staff, who in turn have passed it on to someone they lived with, who then worked a shift at Brunetti's at Melbourne Airport.
There are individuals who are becoming symptomatic, testing positive, who have already infected their close contacts.
The cluster stands at 13, with more than 900 people isolating. The government wants even more people to reach out urgently. Some may have already flown interstate.
Anybody who was at Terminal 4 between 04:45 on Tuesday the 9th of February until 2 p.m, you must isolate. You must get tested. You must contact us.
The UK variant is placing huge pressure on Victoria's already fragile and embattled contact tracing system, and has raised questions again about whether it is up to the task.
This should have been something that we could have still looked to contain with contact tracing, given what we know so far.
The contact tracing isn't gold standard. It's not even fixed.
With a 3rd lockdown upon Victoria, the Premier has flagged a reduction in overseas arrivals until at least the vaccine is rolled out, saying the risk of importing more virus is becoming close to unacceptable.
Should we be having the total number of people coming home, or should it be a much smaller program that's based on compassionate grounds? That's a conversation we should have.
I do think this is something that if we cannot control transmission within hotel quarantine, then we can't offer hotel quarantine. But we should be able to manage that transmission.
Well, Victorians have spent the past few hours postponing their plans. Businesses are reeling. Major events have had to be cancelled. Let's go now to Tom Maddox. Tom, the Australian Open has been embroiled in this cluster since a case emerged from one of the hotels the players used, and now it's been hit by this lockdown.
Yeah, indeed, Mary, but the tennis will go on. Crowds, though, will be banned for the next 5 days. So tonight will be the last chance for fans to come out and watch some tennis, but the gates here at Melbourne Park will be closed to crowds for the next 5 days. But as I say, there will still be tennis, and that's because the Victorian government has deemed effectively that Melbourne Park here is an essential workplace. So tennis players will still be able to come because they're deemed essential workers. They'll be operating under a bubble scenario. Tournament director Craig Tiley spoke to a throng of media earlier today and explained how it will all work.
Everything else you're not able to do, the players will be under those same conditions. So they will pretty much be at the site here for most of the day and then back at their place of residence to sleep.
Tennis Australia's boss speaking there. And Tom, that's what's happening with the tennis. What about elsewhere?
Well, Mary, this has left many people reeling, of course. It just begun to hit their stride and now left in limbo again, and a bunch of events that have been planned for this weekend have been cancelled. Jessica Longbottom reports.
Rumours about a lockdown were swirling this morning, but interstate arrivals at Melbourne Airport had decided to roll the dice.
I felt like it wasn't such a risk to come down.
A few hours later, plans were turned on their head.
I'm going straight home. This is ridiculous.
Victorians have trained for this, but still, familiar scenes at supermarkets returned. No toilet paper, but deep frustration and more pain for business are plenty.
Let's get this done quickly, but business cannot keep wearing the brunt of hotel quarantine breaches.
And what a weekend for it to happen, with restaurants booked out for Valentine's Day now counting the cost.
Probably in a weekend it would be between $70,000 to $100,000.
And get-togethers for the most important celebration in the Chinese calendar, the Lunar New Year, cancelled.
At least we're still safe, we're still healthy, and let's hope the Ox will work very hard, storm out the virus.
Those who could bring their weddings forward from the weekend did.
They've got until 11:59 tonight, essentially. So after a year like this, some people, they just want to be married.
While the biggest sporting blow was to the Australian Open, events at Flemington and AFLW matches this weekend will also be without crowds. For those in regional Victoria, the restrictions are a particularly bitter pill, the first time many have been under a stage 4 lockdown.
Why do we have to pay for what happens in Melbourne? I feel like I don't want to obey the rules anymore. We've had enough.
While there's relief for some parents, with childcare and playgrounds remaining open, it's back to remote learning for schools.
They know they're going to have to connect with their teachers through MS Teams, and everyone is ready to do what needs to be done.
For those who struggled through lockdowns last year, the next 5 days will be particularly tough.
We know that if we went back to the things we did before, keep up our routine, exercise, reach out to those people who we know might be lonely or having a hard time, that we're all going to get through this.
5 days and counting. Jessica Longbottom, ABC News, Melbourne.
Well, the rest of Australia has been quick to react. Rich, can you tell us about the border closures?
Yes, Mary. Western Australia, South Australia and Tasmania have closed their borders to Victorians. Tasmanians in Victoria can go home, but they'll need to quarantine. The Northern Territory and Queensland are only considering Greater Melbourne a hotspot, so travellers, Melburnians, are not welcome. And for people going to New South Wales, they can go there, but you're not meant to leave your home here. And if you're in New South Wales and you're Victorian, or you've been here since January 29, the New South Wales government's asking that you isolate at home where you are and to follow the 5-day lockdown rules for Victoria in New South Wales.
And Rich, news of another lockdown, of course, will be hard to take for many Victorians, but the Premier isn't making any guarantees it's only going to last 5 days.
Well, I guess they can't, because they just don't know how much virus is out there. They're saying that they don't want this lockdown to last a minute beyond what it needs to. But as you can understand, there's enormous political pressure on the government too, not just from the health response. They talked today also about the need to look at trying to reduce the number of international flights. From tomorrow, no international flights will be landing in Melbourne for the duration of the lockdown. And the Premier really leant in today about trying to cap future arrivals until we get more vaccine in Australia, until we get a vaccine in Australia, until that's rolled out to protect hotel workers and beyond. Now, it's a really difficult situation, but it also, again, raises questions about why it's leaking out of Victoria worse than other parts of the country. And the government is hoping that this 5-day lockdown is just the tonic.
Richard Willingham, thank you very much for your report from Parliament House, and Tom Maddox, who's been reporting from Melbourne Park.